What trial ended in chaos? Because a witness yelled out a secret the lawyers didn't want anyone to hear? Story 1. I was the volunteer treasurer for a tiny animal rescue nonprofit, the kind that sells brownies to pay vet bills. When our founder, Marla, got charged with embezzlement after a whistleblower complaint, I was called to testify. The courtroom smelled like old paper and disinfectant. Our supporters were 3 retirees and a bored cat foster in a hoodie. The DA floated spreadsheets like kites. Marla's lawyer kept saying I misallocated purchases. Apparently syringes and kibble look suspicious if you zoom in enough. Then they called Edna, our 80-year-old bookkeeper, who still writes checks with perfect cursive. She shuffled to the stand with her purse like it contained state secrets. The lawyers did their routine. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am, until Marla's attorney asked whether any outside party had suggested changes to the ledgers. Edna squinted, sucked her teeth, and said, I wasn't supposed to say, in that voice elders use before they absolutely say it. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Pruitt, answer the question. Edna exploded. The password is mermaid77, and you told me to delete page 7. Silence. Then 20 people grabbed their phones at once. She fished a folded post-it from her purse like a magician's dove. On it, a banking URL, a date, and mermaid77. The DA turned the color of printer ink. Marla's lawyer went pale. My stomach fell straight through the bench because page 7 was my flagged expense log, refused reimbursements that never added up. IT from the DA's office was already there for the exhibits. The judge ordered a recess, then an immediate login under court supervision. They pulled up the foundation account and a mirror account titled M Consulting. Transfers lined up perfectly with our fundraiser nights. But the destination? Not Marla's personal account. It went to Pruitt and Daughter's bookkeeping. Edna clutched her pearls. That's my daughter's business, she whispered, but I never... The paper trail kept scrolling, and there it was, a second set of transfers to Pruitt Legal Trust. Marla's attorney shared that last name. The courtroom erupted, bailiff shouting, the judge hammering, and Edna started crying that she thought she'd been helping the rescue hide money from the tax man, like everybody does. The DA asked for a mistrial. The defense begged for one. The judge instead severed counts and ordered immediate contempt proceedings against counsel. I watched the charity I loved split open like a rotten log and all the grubs wriggle out. Donor kickbacks, consulting retainers, and staged expenses. Here's the gut punch. When the probate clerk seized the accounts, the balance that would have covered the month's surgeries was there. Plus a note in the memo from the defense trust to the DA's re-election fund. Edna's shouted secret didn't just save the dogs, it torched a campaign, a law license, and my naivete in one click of forgot password. Story 2. I'm 15, custody trial. Family court benches that squeak like they're judging you. Everyone talks around me like I'm a centerpieces arrangement. Mom calm and expensive, Dad wringing his hands raw, the attorneys trading polite grenades. I'd practice saying, I want stability, in the bathroom mirror. So many times the words died in my mouth. Mom's lawyer introduced videos. Dad late to pickup. Dad texting. Traffic nightmare. Dad missing a recital by 20 minutes. Dad's lawyer countered with school records. My A- average. Notes from my therapist. I watched 2 versions of my life fight each other on a projector. Then they put Grandma on the stand. Dad's mom. Professional boundary-less smiler. She was supposed to testify to continuity of care, which sounds like casseroles, and she did, sort of, until Mom's attorney asked if anyone had coached me. Grandma's voice got sharp. She did. She had him read lines. Mom's lawyer blinked. Who is she? Grandma jabbed a finger at my mother like it had been waiting its whole life. Your client. She gave him a script. I found it. Said if he cried when he said unsafe, it would be most persuasive. Mom whispered, Oh my God. The way people say I love you when they don't. Dad's attorney jumped on it, and suddenly the judge wanted to see the script. Grandma pulled a wrinkled sheet from her purse. Bullet points about loud house, dad's girlfriend, goosebumps fear. It felt like reading my diary backwards. Mom's face went hard porcelain. Her lawyer tried to object on grounds I didn't understand. Before anyone could rescue her, Grandma snapped, "And since we're airing secrets, he's not his anyway." Courtrooms can go silent like someone swallowed the oxygen. Mom said, "Elaine, don't." Dad went still. The judge looked like a cartoon owl. Grandma squared her shoulders. "I kept my mouth shut 15 years, but you don't get to ruin my son and my grandson. He's not biologically ours. But he is ours." I thought I'd faint. Dad's eyes were soup. Mom stared at her lap, and suddenly the careful choreography of these adults, scripts, exhibits, calendars, fell apart. The judge cleared his throat, ordered a recess, and insisted on chambers for the attorneys. I sat outside between vending machines while my world got redrawn with Sharpie. 40 minutes later, everyone came back changed. Mom's mascara smudged, Dad holding a tissue like a white flag. The judge, voice soft, asked me where I wanted to be. No scripts left. Just me. I looked at Dad, the man who taught me to tie my tie crooked, who forgot recitals but never forgot pancakes, and said, "With him." Mom started to speak. Her attorney squeezed her wrist. The judge granted joint legal, primary physical with Dad, continued counseling, and sealed the record. But secrets don't seal. At the end, Dad bent down, whispered, so only I heard, "No matter what blood says, you're my kid." I believed him. The twist? Mom did the math later and realized the biofather was her beloved boss, who wrote a character letter for her that morning. He withdrew it quietly the next day. Story 3. I was the safety officer at a food processing plant where the walls sweat and the forklifts hum lullabies. When our union rep, Leo, got fired after reporting a coolant leak, he filed for wrongful termination. We all took the day off to pack the back row of the labor board hearing. Hairnets and backpacks, name badges turned around like talismans. Corporate flew in a lawyer with cufflinks you could see from orbit. He paraded evidence, screenshots of Leo bypassing an interlock, a written warning we'd never seen, a pattern of insubordination assembled like IKEA furniture, tight and soulless. They called a shift lead as their star witness. He looked miserable. "Yes," he said to everything, voice flat. "Yes," Leo ignored lockout. "Yes," he shouted. "Yes," he threatened to go to OSHA. The company counsel was cruising until Leo's lawyer asked the shift lead if anyone had encouraged him to write those warnings. The lead swallowed. The company attorney half rose. That's when our janitor, Alma, who'd been sitting behind us knitting during the whole proceeding, stood up without being called and yelled, "Tell them about the trash bag." The room startled. The hearing officer frowned. The company lawyer objected, but the officer let it ride because the day had already unspooled. Alma marched to the front with her cart like it was a chariot. "I clean the executive offices Tuesdays," she said. 2 weeks after Leo's firing, there's a bag full of shredded paper labeled rehearsal. I sweep, I empty, I also do puzzles. She pulled a Ziploc from her apron, strips painstakingly reassembled with clear tape. There, in jagged mosaic, were email headers, HR to legal, legal to the plant manager, a calendar invite titled Termination Narrative Walkthrough, and bullet points like capture photo of unsafe behavior, use training day if needed. The company lawyer actually said, "This is outrageous," which is what villains say before the third act. The hearing officer requested the originals. Alma told them where the execs kept the cross-cut bin, behind the fern, and suddenly it was downloading server logs while a board member tried to leave and was told to sit down. The twist wasn't just that the screenshots were staged during a lockout drill. It was the Slack messages that popped on the screen from the CEO's alias account. Miles, coaching managers on narrative discipline and joking that OSHA stands for Our Stuff Hidden Always. Miles had posted memes of Leo as a toddler in a hard hat. The room went graveyard cold. They offered Leo a settlement with an NDA the size of a Bible. He looked at us, hairnets, calloused hands, Alma with her taped jigsaw, and said no. The board ruled for him anyway, with a referral to the state AG. We started a strike fund that night. Final punch. A week later, the CEO posted a teary video about family from his lake house. Alma quote-tweeted it with a photo of the reconstructed memo and wrote, "We clean up everything." It got 1 million views before breakfast. The plant still hums, cooler now, quieter, with a new sign over the shredder, "Don't feed the lawyers." Story 4. I was the fiancé, not the defendant. My partner Aaron had filed to annul his whirlwind marriage after discovering his bride, Lila, kept 2 apartments and 1 boyfriend. Annulment is oddly clinical, like arguing over whether a wedding ever happened in the heart, not on paper. We sat in a municipal courtroom that used to be a bank. The vault door was still there, decorative and ominous. Lila arrived in white like the world was a dress code. Her lawyer tried the misunderstood polyamory angle. Ours stuck to fraud. The judge, a woman with a voice like granite, asked for facts. They called the best man, Tyler. He looked nervous in the way of people who have too many secrets and no sleeves. He confirmed he witnessed the vows. He confirmed the ring. He confirmed the reception playlist. I would later hate "Shut Up and Dance" with a biblical fury. Then Lila's lawyer asked a routine question about consummation, and Tyler glanced at Lila, then at Aaron, then at me, and detonated. He wasn't supposed to know it was me. Pens stopped. The court reporter looked at her machine like it had grown wings. Tyler, words tumbling, confessed that the anonymous DM account that had sent Aaron the proof of Lila's affair, the grainy hotel hallway video, the angle from just above the shoulder, was his. He'd filmed it. With Lila, on her wedding night. "It was a dumb bet," he said, sweating through the suit. "She said the vows were just noises. She said the marriage was a brand deal." Lila's attorney tried to stuff the genie back into the transcript. Objection, relevance, move to strike, but the judge wanted the phone. Tyler, shaking, unlocked it. There, in crisp 4K, Lila in her hotel robe, laughing into the camera. "Influencers don't get married, Ty. We launch." The timestamp read 1:32 a.m., 4 hours after the garter toss. The courtroom went hot with whispers. I felt my pulse in my eyes. Aaron stared at the video like it was a foreign film with no subtitles. And then the real twist. The judge tapped the screen to pause and frowned at the reflection in the mirror behind Lila. It wasn't Tyler alone. Another figure stood just out of frame. Lila's lawyer, jacket off, tie loosened. The judge blinked once, twice. "Counsel," she said, so flat the oxygen hid. "Approach." He stammered. He categorically denied. He took a deep breath and said he'd been consulting Lila at the hotel earlier that evening. The mirror did not consult. The judge recessed, referred him to the bar on the spot, and granted the annulment with a scathing statement about performance art marriages. Outside, Lila tried to go live to control the narrative. No one watched. Tyler slumped on the steps like a marionette with cut strings. I expected triumph. Instead, I felt weirdly free. Sometimes a shouted secret is a gift wrapped in dynamite. I slid the ring into my pocket and asked Aaron if he wanted coffee. He did. We didn't get married either, not then, maybe not ever. We chose honesty over spectacle, and for once, that felt like winning. Story 5. Our neighborhood HOA sued an elderly couple, the Singhs, for defamation after someone on a burner Facebook page called the board president a pocket tyrant with a contractor fetish. It was petty until it wasn't. Attorneys, depositions, a packed county courtroom because everyone loves a slow-motion car crash, especially when it has a Facebook event. I testified that the Singhs mostly post pictures of their tomato vines. The HOA's lawyer rolled his eyes like tomatoes were a gateway drug to libel. Their star witness was a tech consultant who traced the burner's IP to the Singhs' house. The room nodded along. Case closed, right? Then Mrs. Chavez, our retired librarian, witness for the defense, stood up in the gallery and shouted, "Ask them why the Wi-Fi password is board meeting." The judge, exhausted already, let the defense explore. Mrs. Chavez explained that the HOA had installed free community Wi-Fi last year to stream meetings. The router sat in the clubhouse wall that shared a conduit with the Sings duplex. Password? Board meeting. No MAC filtering, no authentication. Any fool with a phone could look like any neighbor, she said, shooting the board a look that had shushed generations. The defense subpoenaed the HOA's IT invoices. There were 3, all paid to the president's cousin. The county tech guy, already on hand for courtroom AV, pulled logs from the router. They showed dozens of devices using the HOA IP, kids' tablets, a Peloton, and Alexa that never stopped listening. The kicker. The burner posts spiked during board meetings, often within minutes of the president muting public comment. We were already buzzing when the bailiff handed the judge a note from a late witness, Miguel, the pool lifeguard, age 19, who swore he'd seen the president typing furiously on a tablet during meetings, Facebook open. He was sworn in and pointed right at her. She told me to engage the community from the official page and the spicy one from the guest network, he said, and then, eyes wet, added the secret the lawyers clearly didn't want. She made her daughter run the burner. She said it'd be a civics lesson. The president went marble still. Her daughter was in the back row, fingers white around a phone. The judge ordered a recess, confiscated devices, and within the hour, court IT linked the burner account to the daughter's Instagram recovery email and, through the clubhouse logs, to the president's own IPAD. The HOA's counsel tried to pivot to say the Sings had provoked discourse. The judge dismissed the case with prejudice, sanctioned the HOA, and referred the president for cyber harassment review. The Sings cried right there, tomatoes don't cure everything, but they helped. The ending wasn't just legal. The neighborhood voted to dissolve the board 2 months later. On the last day, the president posted one final rant, then a for sale listing. Her daughter came by our little free library and slipped a note between the cookbooks. I'm sorry. We left it there, a tiny museum tag for the chaos we survived, powered by one shouted secret and an unsecured password. Story 6. I was the court reporter. Neutral hands, neutral face, stenotype under fluorescence. The case was a will contest that felt like a family reunion hosted by a knife block. Mr. Halverson, a widower with a stamp collection worth small islands, had changed his will to leave everything to his much younger caregiver, Kira, 2 days before he died. His adult children sat stiff as coat racks behind the petitioner's table. Kira dabbed her eyes with a tissue that never got wet. The children's lawyer tried to paint Kira as a gold digger. Kira's counsel countered with hospice notes, friendship, late-life joy. I typed it all, not the sighs or the small sounds grief makes when it's trying not to be seen. Then the hospice nurse took the stand. She was precise, the way people become when they're building a bridge out of facts over a river of judgment. Was Mr. Halverson competent on the date he signed the new will? The attorney asked. Yes, she said. Alert and oriented. Any undue pressure? No. The cross-exam was gentle until the son's attorney asked whether anyone else was present. The nurse hesitated. I heard the clack of my own keys slow. The notary, she said, and Kira. Then, softer. And Pastor Joel. Heads turned. The family blinked. The pastor from the old Lutheran church had baptized them, buried their mother, presided over potlucks. He'd also submitted a glowing affidavit verifying the signature. They called him. Tall, silver hair, the kind of smile you can hang a coat on. He swore to tell the truth and leaned into the story about shepherding a lonely man through his last days. The courtroom exhaled. It was going Kira's way, until Mrs. Dahl, the neighbor, the one the lawyers assumed was just scenery, stood up in the gallery, cheeks red with a century of Midwestern rage, and yelled, "Tell them he was already dead when you signed it." 1,000 molecules stopped. The judge's gavel cracked, but the sentence echoed louder. Mrs. Dahl walked forward with her purse like a weaponized casserole. I bake for the hospice floor, she said, voice steady. I was there that afternoon because they'd run out of coffee. I saw the machines turned off at 3:12 p.m. The pastor walked in at 3:30 with a briefcase. The body was already cold. Pastor Joel went bone pale. Kira's attorney sputtered. The judge called for the medical chart. Time of death, 3:08 p.m. The will's notarization, 3:41 p.m. Kira started to cry the way faucets start to leak. The pastor, hands shaking, said it was a misunderstanding of sequence. Signatures had been prepared in advance, the pen had touched, consent had been previously expressed. It sounded like a homily written by a copier jam. Then the nurse, eyes glossy, added the secret the room could not accept. Pastor Joel asked me to move the clock back. I refused, everything fractured. The judge referred the notarization to the DA on the spot, voided the new will, reinstated the old one, and ordered Pastor Joel into the hallway with his lawyer and a bailiff who looked like an oak tree. The punch was the part I typed with shaking hands. A sealed note from Mr. Halverson, discovered inside the stamp album, dated 2 weeks earlier. To Kira, it read, "You gave me dignity. Ask my children to pay you from the estate for your care." The kids looked at each other, 3 proud faces folding, and nodded. Sometimes the right will is the one nobody wrote down. Story 7. I was the junior paralegal on a glossy securities fraud case that tasted like old money and new math. Our client, a mid-level analyst turned whistleblower, claimed a crypto exchange had been wash trading with its own market maker shell to pump volumes. Opposing counsel arrived in suits whose lapels could cut glass. The gallery was a carousel of finance Twitter lurkers, journalists, and 3 guys who looked like they'd sleep in their Teslas. The exchange's defense hinged on a data scientist, a stoic woman with a resume that read like a calculator fell in love with an astronaut. She testified to independent counterparties, robust compliance, an algorithmic matching engine blind to issuer affiliation. The jury's eyes glazed. The judges didn't. Cross-exam, our lawyer asked about a pseudonymous Slack user, Orpheus, who wrote many of the routing rules. The witness said it was a shared account for testing. Routine. Then the court called a translator because Curveball, the exchange's Singapore office, had provided logs in Mandarin. The translator, a slight man with careful hair, took the stand to authenticate a translation. Defense counsel, Breezy, asked him to confirm that Orpheus was just a handle that appeared in messages like, "Optimize maker rebates." "Yes," he said. "Any identifying info?" Our side prodded. The translator looked at the page, then at counsel, then at the judge and blurted, "Orpheus is the prosecutor's little brother." Chaos is a sound. Chairs skidding, a reporter dropping his pen, the judge's voice suddenly made of iron. The prosecutor froze. The defense lawyer tried to perform outrage and landed on smirking. The translator, realizing he'd pulled a fire alarm, barreled on. I did the intake. I saw the chat names in Pinyin and the user's real initials. They matched the prosecutor's sibling. He used a private email to create the handle. I told the paralegal. He pointed straight at me like a lightning rod. I wanted to swallow my badge. I had flagged initials inconsistent in our doc review stack and kicked it up. It had been marked not material to merits. The judge cleared the courtroom except the parties. They traced the account, a seed line from an email the prosecutor's brother used as a music blog in college to the exchange's dev Slack. The messages weren't just technical. They joked about keeping the candles lit when volumes dropped, about market making with the house chopsticks. The prosecutor recused on the spot, remarkable composure masking a face that had just watched a career slide off a table. The case moved to an outside special counsel. Our client looked at me with this odd tenderness, like we were both kids who'd wandered into an adult fire. Twist. When special counsel subpoenaed the brother, he brought a notebook, handwritten flow diagrams of the matching engine, and a letter. He'd become a ghost employee to get his brother to look at the exchange. I thought if you saw it, you'd stop them. I never thought you'd be the one on the case, he wrote. The jury never heard that part. But the settlement number started with a B, and the exchange announced leadership changes before noon. The prosecutor resigned. His brother? He applied for a job at the SEC. Sometimes whistleblowing detonates in the wrong room and still lights the right path. Story 8. I'm the teacher who got fired for moral turpitude because a deepfake of me kissing a colleague went viral on parent Facebook. The school district called it a regrettable lapse in judgment, then escorted me out with a cardboard box. My union filed suit. The hearing took place in a beige conference center where dreams go to yawn. The district's lawyer smirked as he queued up the video. Grainy, cafeteria fluorescent, my face pasted onto someone else's motion like a sticker on a fan blade. Our expert explained face swapping, compression artifacts, the uncanny valley behind my left ear. The board members looked like they wanted to go back to pretending technology was optional. Then the IT director testified. He was a nervous man with coffee breath, hired on a grant. He confirmed the file had been submitted anonymously and appeared to come from a student Google Drive. The district's council leaned on words like community standards and role modeling. They called a parent witness, PTA president, a woman who could fundraise a new gym by Tuesday. She talked about values, then dropped a line about protecting donors from scandal, and I could feel the board swivel toward the money. Our last witness was a sophomore named Noor. Quiet, hoodie up, the kind of kid adults underestimate because she writes code instead of eye contact. Her job was to speak to the school's social media policies. She answered in careful sentences until the district's attorney asked if she knew anything about the account that posted the video. Noor's hands clenched. Then she yelled, voice cracking the fluorescent hush, "Ask them about the filter called Chaperone. The principal bought it." Heads snapped. The board chair tried to gavel down a minor, which is never a good look. Noor rushed on. The principal had purchased an AI brand safety package from a vendor named Chaperone that boasted narrative shaping. It included a pilot for reputation defense, automatic generation of contextual content to drown out negative posts. It also included a quiet feature, ingestion of student media streams for ecosystem health monitoring. Noor held up her Chromebook. They installed the extension on Journalism Club laptops, she said. It can capture our drafts. It has face swap as a demo. I found the template in the cache. The IT director went gray. He whispered that the vendor had asked for realistic test data. The principal shifted like a man whose chair had turned into water. The vendor contract popped onto the projector. A clause labeled Content Simulation for Staff Reputation Scenarios, signed by, you guessed it, the PTA president, as pilot sponsor. The boardroom imploded. Counsel for the district asked for a recess. Our union lawyer asked for blood. In the end, the district reinstated me with back pay. The principal resigned to pursue opportunities in risk management, and the PTA president issued a statement blaming overzealous innovation. The twist was in the faces. The kids were the ones who stood between us and the machine. Noor's hoodie had a patch I'd never noticed. Binary heart. She won a state prize for investigative journalism that spring. On the certificate, I wrote, "Thank you for teaching the adults." Story 9. I was best friends with the defendant's ex-wife, which meant I was a hostile witness in a corporate trade secret trial dressed as a soap opera. He'd left her for a co-founder and allegedly walked out with the company's core algorithm, a recommendation engine that could sell mittens to the Sahara. She claimed he'd built it on her time and her dime. He claimed she was an operations person, which is Silicon Valley for invisible. The courtroom was all glass and echo. Their startup's investors lined the back row like ravens. The judge asked intelligent questions in a voice that could slice a loaf of sourdough perfectly. We spoke about Git commits, repository access, who owned what laptop on what weekend. The jury kept squinting like ownership could be seen if you just tilted your head. Then her teenage son, Mateo, took the stand. He was 16, skater hair, hoodie sleeves chewed. He was supposed to confirm that mom worked late and dad took calls in the garage. He did, monotone, until the defense lawyer smirked. "And you never saw your mother write code, did you?" Mateo stared at his laces. Then he looked up and shouted, "She wrote it in my Minecraft server. Check the plugin name. It's called Felt Cute. The room detonated. The judge, stunned, asked what he meant. Mateo explained that when he was 12, his mom used his private Minecraft server as a sandbox to prototype the ranking weights because the house VPN was down and the company repo was stuck behind permissions. She wrote the logic as a server plugin, safe, fast, fun, called Felt Cute because she didn't think it'd live long. Then she ported it. The old plugin, he said, still lived in a dusty folder under his gamer tag. Her ex scoffed. Ridiculous. Juvenile. The court's tech nodded to the bailiff, who handed over a laptop. 10 minutes later, a blocky dashboard loaded on the projector with a plugin directory. And there it was. FeltCute.jar, last modified 3 years ago by Mama Sunflower. The code comments read like lullabies and lightning. Note: if weight on session length greater than 0.6, bias towards doomscroll. Protect kid users from overfitting to noise. A silence fell, soft as a blanket. The ex's counsel tried to say it was derivative work, exploratory, not the same engine. Our expert diffed the logic in real time. The bones matched. The ex had taken her skeleton, covered it in buzzwords, and called it a revolution. The twist wasn't the verdict. She won ownership and a licensing deal that would buy Mateo a college and a skate park. It was what the investors did after. Two walked up to her, humbled, and apologized for never once asking who wrote the first version. The third tried to poach her. She laughed, signed the papers, and renamed the algorithm Felt Cute in the contract, footnote and all. Sometimes justice looks like a variable you hid in plain sight under your kid's username. Story 10. I'm a claims adjuster who became a reluctant witness in a workers' comp trial that turned into a morality play. A roofer named Deshaun fell 3 stories when a safety harness failed. The contractor's insurer, my side, argued pre-existing condition. His lawyer argued negligence. I sat with a folder of photos and a migraine while the contractor's attorney polished his cufflinks on outrage. Their foreman testified the harness was industry standard, inspected weekly. Deshaun's crew swore the webbing felt like chewing gum. We poached the manufacturer records. The numbers danced maddeningly. Then they called the project manager, a man in a crisp shirt, too white for construction, who insisted everything met code and that Deshaun had clipped wrong. In the back row was a woman I hadn't met, small, steady, folding and unfolding a prayer card. She was Deshaun's aunt, I learned. She'd raised him. When opposing counsel swaggered about personal responsibility, she stood up and yelled, voice like the first crack of thunder, "Tell them how you cut the harness to fit the quote." The room pitched. The judge, eyebrow arched to the ceiling, invited her forward. She said she cleaned the contractor's office nights. A week after the fall, she'd found a trash bag full of returned safety gear marked trimmed. She took pictures because something in her bones said, "Keep this." She handed me her phone with a shaking hand. There they were. Harnesses with webbing snipped and restitched, tags reading modified for comfort, invoices stamped paid from a discount vendor. The project manager tried to shrug it off as field adjustments. Our expert's face said felony. Then came the twist no one saw. In the bag photos behind the harnesses, a clipboard with a printed email chain. The subject line read, "Bid tightening." The attached spreadsheet showed a column. Savings if we derate PPE. A cell was highlighted, $4,412. The initials next to the spreadsheet? Mine. Because my company, his insurer, had asked for loss trend improvements in the bid review, the kind that make people squeeze pennies until someone falls. The judge called a recess and told everyone to bring their supervisors. I called mine. Voices got low, then sharp. The contractor's lawyer wanted to settle. Deshaun's lawyer wanted a number with teeth. The state safety inspector in the gallery wanted names. We settled for an amount that made the courtroom suck in air, with conditions, independent audits, training, a fund for workers' families. My company's counsel sat very still as the judge hinted at bad faith. I asked the aunt if I could buy her dinner. She said, "Bring Boots to the site instead." The last line that stuck with me wasn't in the transcript. It was the aunt, outside under a sky the color of slate, telling Deshaun, "You didn't fall because you failed. You fell because they counted wrong." He squeezed her hand with the only arm that didn't hurt and smiled anyway. Sometimes the shouted secret burns both sides and lights a safer scaffold for the next crew. Story 11. I was the hospital's on-call biomedical engineer, dragged into a sleek malpractice trial by a subpoena that smelled like bleach and fear. A premature infant had died after a ventilator alarm never sounded. The parents sued the hospital and the device maker. The courtroom was stainless steel calm, experts in dark suits explaining nuisance parameters, while the mother clutched a stuffed giraffe in the gallery like it could still breathe. The device manufacturer brought a star witness, a vice president who talked like a TED Talk. Redundant sensors, quarterly firmware, zero critical failures in the field. Our counsel countered with maintenance logs I'd signed, ugly with red highlight where a non-critical alarm patch was pending FDA notice. The VP smiled through it. "User error," he said, and the jurors wrote that down like gravity. Then they called Marta, a night shift respiratory tech who'd worked the NICU longer than any of us. Gentle, precise, exhausted. She confirmed she'd responded to the baby's DSAT. She explained how she'd checked connections, how the alarm never chirped. Defense tried to corner her on workflow deviation. Their lawyer asked whether she'd ever silenced an alarm. She said yes, of course, to hush the nuisance beeps while fixing the cause. He pressed, could she have muted the wrong channel? She looked like someone asked if she forgot her own name. And that's when the transport porter, quiet kid, buzz cut, cap still in his hands, stood from the back row and shouted, "Tell them about quiet mode. They told us to leave it on for donors." The room gasped. The judge's gavel cracked open the air. The kid flushed but didn't sit. He said a PR consultant had suggested to leadership that donor tours went better without NICU alarms, creating anxiety, so the hospital had piloted a setting in certain bays, quiet mode, which required a manual override to escalate to audible. He'd moved the vent during a bay swap and seen the purple Q icon. He had screenshots because, he said, people don't believe porters. The consultant's deck appeared on a screen within minutes. An email chain titled, "Experience Optimization," bullet points about tone confidence. And then the twist, the device VP's signature on a separate thread, offering the quiet mode as a soft launch feature for strategic partners ahead of regulatory clearance. No sound escalation in first 90 seconds, it read. Visual only. Hospitals love the calm. Marta started to cry. I felt my skull fill with bees. The judge halted testimony, referred the hospital and manufacturer to the AG, and ordered the jury out. Settlement whispers followed, frantic and obscene. But the parents stayed. They asked to speak. The mother stood, voice steady as a scalpel. We would have taken the beeps. The device maker withdrew its zero failures claim by afternoon. The hospital replaced leadership by month's end. In my workshop, I peeled the quiet mode stickers off every unit with a box cutter and bled my thumb clean. We wrote a policy. Alarms first, pride never. The stuffed giraffe sat on my bench a week. I keep its button eye in my pocket still. Story 12. I grew up next to the river that became Exhibit A. Our town's class action against a chemical company filled the old courthouse with boots and bottled water. The company insisted its foam suppressant never reached our wells. Our side brought jars that glowed slightly wrong under the fluorescence. I sat in the gallery with my dad, who still boils coffee like penance. The company's hydrologist waved maps like flags: impermeable clay, upstream discharge, attenuation. Our expert, a professor with river hair, showed fish livers that looked like pickled maps of bad decisions. The judge chewed a pencil and asked smart questions about plume modeling. It was almost polite. They called our mayor, slick suit, campaign smile, there to testify about emergency response. He beamed about distribution points and Facebook Lives, thanked the company for cooperation. Then, opposing counsel asked if he'd ever signed an NDA with the company. He said, of course not, hand to chest, offended. From the back row, Mrs. Hidalgo, who cleaned City Hall and once ran the best tamale stand in 2 counties, stood and yelled, "Show them the ice machine." We all turned because that's not a metaphor you ignore. She marched to the stand with a battered phone and a key ring that could open history. She'd snapped photos the night she found pallets of donated water stacked in the mayor's private office, the municipal ice maker hooked to a countertop reverse osmosis unit branded with the chemical company's logo. On the door, a laminated sign for executive use. Date, 2 weeks before the first public advisory. The room tilted. The company's lawyer tried to object. The judge asked why the mayor had his own purified line while the town drank the river. He blustered about pilot filtration. Mrs. Hidalgo swiped to a video. The mayor, tipsy at a fundraiser boasting that "our friends covered us," signed a courtesy doc and everything. She tapped the screen. A PDF the company had emailed, labeled Community Partnership Agreement, with a confidentiality clause that would make a spy blush. But the twist was quieter. In an email thread within that PDF, the town's contracted testing lab, our supposed ally, agreed to batch samples and replace outliers with controls for report consistency. The control water? Bottled spring water. The lab tech who'd been called for the defense slid down in his seat like he wished the floor would exhale him. The judge recessed and sent sheriffs to seize servers. The chemical company's counsel asked about global resolution. Our attorney said 2 words I've never heard sound kinder. Jury first. The verdict came quick and loud, zeros like lifebuoys. The mayor resigned that night. The lab shuttered. A week later, I watched Mrs. Hidalgo set a new sign over the public fountain. Filtered, for everyone. She handed me a cup. It tasted like a promise kept late, but kept. Story 13. University hearings aren't supposed to feel like trials, but this one wore a suit. A doctoral candidate, Dina, was accused of fabricating data in a blockbuster paper about a cheap diagnostic for ovarian cancer. The med school auditorium hung with banners about truth. Her PI, a celebrity scientist, sat with counsel, jaw granite. The journal had embargoed the piece. Donors hovered like owls. As the grad student ombudsperson, I sat at the table with Dina, who looked like sleep forgot her. The university's attorney presented a sequence of Western blots with bands that repeated like ghosts. A statistics prof explained p-values like lullabies for adults. The room nodded at the word improbable. The PI's counsel sighed about unfortunate sloppiness. We called a lab tech, Samir, to speak about chain of custody. He was nervous and decent, the backbone of science. He confirmed vials moved, notebooks signed. The PI's lawyer asked whether he'd ever seen Dina cut corners. He said no. Then the lawyer flashed a smile that didn't touch his eyes and asked if Samir knew anything about a Dropbox folder labeled Figure Alternatives. Samir stared like a deer at calculus. Before he could answer, a voice from the aisle erupted. Marta, the custodial supervisor for the floor, who'd been counting chairs during night shifts and overheard enough senior faculty gossip to teach a seminar. "Ask them about art night," she yelled. The dean winced. The judge in him woke up. Marta explained that once a month, after grant deadlines, the PI hosted art night, pizza, wine, and beautification, where postdocs cleaned up figures for presentations. She brought a recycled cardboard sign she'd saved from the lounge. No stinky reagents tonight. Pure aesthetics. A joke, everyone said. A vibe. A tradition. Then came the text thread she'd also saved while retrieving tossed printer cartridges. Screenshots between the PI and a designer at an agency hired to elevate visuals for high-impact storytelling. The designer. "Do you want the blot straighter?